Mics are live.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock, and welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled Police Services Board meeting of this date, the 23rd of June, 2021. I'm looking around, and we do have a quorum that is available, so we will proceed with the meeting. We have looks like a lengthy agenda, but a lot of it's communications and some discussion that we will have. This morning, we will have one deputation from our Crime Stoppers partners, and I'm sure that there will be an ask at the end of that presentation, so we'll take that on as it presents itself. First, I need to have a declaration of any pecuniary interest from the members that are here today, and seeing none, we will move. There are no ceremonial activities, no checks to present to us for deposit, anything like that. So we will move on to our presentation deputation, and today we have Neil Unwin and Amy Bernardo from Crime Stoppers of Haldeman and Norfolk, and let you know that you have 10 minutes of deputation time if you wish to use all of that, and I'll turn it over to you. Can you hear us? Wave your hand, say hi, whatever. Over to you, Neil. Unmute yourselves and Neil, are you ready to go? Amy?
Can you guys unmute Neil?
Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
We can hear the deputants and the presenters. They're able to speak.
Neil, can you hear us?
I'm assuming everybody can hear me?
We can hear you, Neil.
I can only see Amy. So I will proceed. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. As you know, usually it's January when we're getting our year-end report, but with COVID, as with some of the other things, we've been delayed. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, even though we're halfway through the year. Excuse me. Now, 2020, it was still a busy year for us, tip-wise, despite cancellation of all our fundraising activities. The one thing the pandemic did not slow down, we found, was criminal activity, and that will come as a surprise to anyone in the meeting today. We did also hold our provincial training conference, again via Zoom, and our program once again received a few awards. Outstanding fundraising concept, that was our Protect Your Identity Shredding event. And also best special feature, and that was our Turn In a Fentanyl Trafficker campaign that offers a $1,000 reward for information on traffickers. So we're pleased and proud of those two acknowledgements from the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers. As I mentioned, the pandemic did not slow down our tip volume, as Amy can attest. We did have an increase from 2019, 31 arrests 148 charges laid, and most significantly, over $2.5 million in narcotics recovered by our police partners, and which just goes to, I think, demonstrate the value that Crime Stoppers does bring to all the law enforcement partners and to our community at large. As a result of the tips received, 579, in fact, our program authorized $7,275 in reward to our anonymous tipsters. Now, as I mentioned, due to the pandemic in 2020, all of our fundraising activities were canceled. And as the group knows, that is the basis of our funds to pay for tips and operate. So it was a significant punch. We're estimating about $20,000 we lost in fundraising last year. This year we're did a little outside the box thinking, and our spring gala was canceled. But we did do an online sale of rain barrels, which was successful. And we're doing our shredding events as well. We are hoping to do our golf tournament, August 12th in Cayuga. With things opening up, we're hopeful that will continue, which will help to recoup some funds that we weren't able to raise last year. That being said, our funds we still continue to pay tip rewards, and we continued with our campaign of our fentanyl trafficker from April and May of this year. The $1,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of a fentanyl trafficker or recovery of that narcotic. As years gone by, we've been pleased with the results of that program and that initiative, and we have no doubt that we will continue. We also continue to support the local student Crime Stopper programs throughout Alderman and Norfolk, where they are situated, including offering a $1,000 bursary to a graduating student through our William Portman Memorial Award. In addition, this year, as you are all aware, tragically, December 31st, 2020, Calgary Police Sergeant Andrew was killed in the line of duty. Andrew was an active member of Hagersville Secondary School Crime Stoppers program, and in fact was our regional Crime Stoppers Award recipient in 2001. As a result of that, our board is in discussions with Sullivan County as well as Sullivan Secretary School in Grand Erie to fund a memorial for Sergeant Carnap in the form of a bench or a tree or whatever is deemed appropriate. We have been in contact with the Harnett family, and they are in agreement with this. So we're just in the midst of doing that. Again, it's been delayed due to COVID. So, I'll just, I believe the report has been distributed to you all, so I won't read it word for word. That was a brief summary of our activities. We continue despite challenges due to COVID, and as mentioned, tip volume, as Amy attest, increased again last year, and it continues this year. And as a result, our program continues to thrive and is successful throughout the community. And we appreciate the support we do receive from the Police Services Board. And as a result, we are making our annual request for funding, $1,000 or being spent. We have made a presentation to the Alderman Police Services Board earlier this year. They have provided some funds to us. Amy, I think you asked that, or take any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you very much, Neil. Just to make it clear, did you have an ask in there, and how much? You're on mute, sir.
Are all members of the board on mute inside chambers? Is everybody in chambers on mute? Just maybe that's part of the reason why there's all the feedback. Yeah.
Okay. Again, it was very difficult to hear. I think there's a lot of feedback going on. So, Neil or Amy, if you just want to reiterate what was the ask at the end of your presentation.
Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, Amy.
Amy, we can hear you.
Okay, so sorry, there seems to be a little bit of technical difficulties here. The board is respectfully requesting $5,000.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. So how we will proceed, number one, is go for any questions to the deputation from the members of the board. Following that, we will accept the deputation as information, and then we will deal with the ask from the deputation. So questions from the board to the deputation. Mr. Van Houten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not sure if you can both hear me. If you nod, Neil and Amy, yeah, can you hear me okay? Neil, you maybe not. Maybe Amy, if I could just get a little bit of clarification. We had difficulties hearing Neil's presentation, so I just wanted to maybe if you could reiterate just a couple of the highlights. What was the request for funding in previous years? And I gather, of course, because of the COVID, it's very, very difficult raising funds this coming year, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And what in previous years, what was the request for funding normally?
I believe it's been relatively the same. I can't remember if last year, to be honest, was $3,000. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Further?
Mr. Chairman, Neil can't hear.
Thank you, Member Van Houten. Any other questions from the members of the board? Member Santos?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Unwin, I just wanted to ask a question. I noticed on page 15 of our agenda that the tip activity in the month up and inclusive up until May 2021, the calls, anonymous calls coming in was 273. I find that fairly high. I'm just wondering how the success each and every month and what's being done to achieve this high number.
Can I answer on that?
Certainly.
So, yes, numbers are definitely up this year compared to last year. I think there's no rhyme or reason other than the fact that crime is still happening, perhaps more so during this COVID, for certain types of crimes, I'll say. Yeah, our numbers are a little bit higher at this point than they were last year.
Go ahead, member.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so this is Bernardo, if I may then, so the question here is how are you capable of handling all these calls? Do you have enough staff?
So I am the only staff. I am the coordinator of the program. A lot of tips do come in via the web, which obviously in this wonderful world we live in, it's not just specifically phone. However, I man the lines Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. And then we have an answering service who mans the line after hours, therefore being the 24/7. I'm fully capable of meeting this. There's no issues in terms of staff.
Carry on.
And my last question, on page 15, I noticed that there's reference to provincially, nationally, and internationally illicit tobacco. I don't see the word cannabis in there. Now, I know that cannabis is legal, but I mean, we are aware that in our community and other communities that cannabis seems to be a big issue. Is that something that Crime Stoppers is still actively involved in?
To be brutally honest, I mean, we do accept information on all types of crimes. At the Ontario Association Canadian Crime Stoppers, I'm not sure at this level or what they're doing, if they have a partnership happening with that. So unfortunately, I'm not able to answer specifically to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions to the deputation from members of the board? I don't see any hands up. Just so everyone understands clearly that monthly we get statistical report from the Ontario Provincial Police, our local detachment commander, and included in that report are the monthly bulletin summary of activities from Crime Stoppers. So we're very in tune to what's happening, at least on a monthly basis, from your reporting. If there are no other questions from the members, then I will accept a motion to receive the deputation as information. Then we will move on to their ask for a donation. I need a mover and a seconder. Mr. Santos, and we have Member Huffman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe we have the mayor on, and we also have the councillor that have joined us.
Yep. Yes, certainly. All members of the board are present at this time. Now, I did not. I should. Ask both members of council if there are any pecuniary interest conflicts to declare. None.
None for me.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify that administrative detail. So then we will move on to the request for a donation from the Crime Stoppers of Haldimand and Norfolk. We heard Amy tell us that the ask was for $5,000. Looking at our financial statement from February of this year, and a roundup of expenses in 2020, Crime Stoppers of Haldimand and Norfolk received a donation of $2,000 from the Police Services Board. The Police Services Board, of course, like everyone else, is affected by COVID, and our source of income primarily is police auctions, and those police auctions have not been happening, or if they have been happening, the turnover of product through that process is very small. So we haven't received any revenue from February to the current date through that process. So the current balance that we have is slightly more than $3,100, $3,184.54 to be exact. So the ask is for $5,000. We certainly do not have $5,000 in the bank. Again, I repeat, we have a little over $3,100 in the bank. So I turn it over to members to provide their commentary on that point, and if someone wishes at some point to make a motion, we'll gladly accept it at the chair. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're limited in funds, but seeing the great work that they do, I would put a motion to match exactly what we did last year, which is 2,000. And I know we're limited with funds, but we're not a profit organization. I mean, we have enough funds to survive as a police services board, but now's the time to, I believe, support the Crime Stoppers of Haldeman, Norfolk. And after reading what I've read on page 15, I'm impressed. So they've got my support. So I put that out to the board. Thank you.
So the motion is for $2,000 from Member Santos. Is there a seconder for that motion before we go into discussion? Member Huffman seconds that. Thank you. Mr. Santos, you have first kick at the can for any discussion that you wish.
Well, if I may, just so that everybody's aware, I mean, after listening to the presentation and hearing what Mrs. Bernardo has said and Mr. Unwin, and again, on page 15, I think we should support this 110% and not even question it and move on. Again, I leave that up to the board, but that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Further discussion. Member Huffman, you have second kick at the can if you wish.
Yes, I just want to say that this is a very valuable community service, and I know that there's a few active cases right now where Crime Stoppers is very valuable in terms of hoping to solve a hit and run in Hagersville, and it would be the benefit of our community to continue to support Crime Stoppers. I wish it could be more, but unfortunately our funds are limited, so I fully support the $2,000 offer.
Thank you very much. And Member Van Houten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Huffman just made all the discussions that I was going to mention. They're extremely valuable. I wish I could have done better, but we're in a limited budget as well, so I support the motion as presented.
Thank you. Any other commentary to the motion? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the 2,000 donation to Crime Stoppers for the year 2021. Show of hands, please. Thank you. That is carried. That then takes us to approval, Correctional Police Services Board minute of the last meeting, and that was in May, on the 19th of May. If there are no errors, omissions, or corrections, we'll accept them as presented. No motion needed, just if there are no corrections, errors, or omissions, we'll accept them. Seeing none, we'll accept those as presented. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. Anything from the members? Seeing none. That takes us then to correspondence. The first item is 7A, a correspondence from Mr. Orville Slack. That was presented to us. Following that correspondence, there was a report to council on this topic, illegal cannabis cultivation, Norfolk County. The supervisor, if that's his current title, of bylaw, Mr. Jim Milson, made a very informative presentation, and the correspondence is just here for to be received by the board. So I need a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence from Mr. Slack. Mr. Santos and Member Van Houten. Any discussion on that? Member Santos.
If I may, Mr. Chair, there were 2 points in this letter that was sent from Mr. Slack, and one question I have, Mr. Chair, to our chief is on page 8 of this. On the first paragraph of page 8 of our agenda, it says, and this is Mr. Slack referring to a phone call that was placed on January the 29th, 2021 at 10:18 a.m., advising that he's still awaiting to be contacted by a member of the command staff. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, to the chief, if that could be looked into, please. Okay, so that was one concern. Thank you, Mr. Chair, to our chief. And then also on page 7, which is the previous, it was just a comment here. It says here, members of the community have attempted to have conversations with members of the local OPP, however, have given up in total disgust because of the lack of interest displayed by the officers. That concerns me. So, oh, sorry, it is the 4th paragraph from the bottom on page 7 of the agenda. Yes. Yeah, so it says here, Mr. Chair, to our chief. So it says, and I mean, I don't want to reiterate, but the point here is I'm also concerned with that, or that comment itself. So I was just wondering if, Chief Scott, if you could do me a favor and speak to Mr. Slack and maybe further that.
My apologies. I know Mr. Slack's had considerable contact with our point of interest of our point investigator in our street crimes unit. Certainly, they are more apt to take actionable action based on the evidence that he should or can provide or information. I think that's a direct link. And again, I'd be glad to sit down and have a cup of coffee with Mr. Slack and have any discussions that he wished. I will say that after the deputation, we have a very good optic on the grow ops here. We have got improved linkages through Projafacet, to say the least. I've rattled some chains. But the fact still remains, and we've got, as we've seen through the COVID enforcement strategies, and as well as my personal relationship with Mr. Milson, a considerable improvement. And I would go back to my time here as an operations manager from bylaw, that it's been very positive, very productive, and very collaborative. And I can't see that changing in the future. So, you know, I look at some of the points addressed. You know, communication is always our key to success. And again, as has been discussed, in many, you know, Mr. Slack and his committee and group have made some excellent points. And however, some of the mandate of these things are beyond the scope of us as the police, given our current regulation. But we certainly won't turn a blind eye to crime, but it has to be evidence-based and stand the test of time, which I'm sure I know it has been very well documented in local media and justice reports and decisions that have been made through the courts on the stance of some of the illegal or overgrows in some of the lawful grows. And again, when you look at some of the points that Mr. Slack has raised in relation to the structures and various things that are bylaw regulated to greenhouses and things, that's totally beyond the scope of the police. So we'll continue to work with the community and bylaw and all our partners on this.
Thank you. Any further commentary on the motion to receive as information the correspondence from Mr. Slack? Member Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if we could, now I've got echo. Is that okay?
Turn your volume down a bit. It might not happen.
Well, I've never had to do this before, so I'll try now. Okay. I was just wondering if we could take Inspector Scott's offer to have a coffee with Mr. Slack, if we could take him up on that.
Inspector?
Absolutely. I'll even buy. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll even buy.
Here we go.
So.
It's on the record now.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
Extra small. No, sorry. I'd be more than willing to.
Be taking up donations for that. Any other commentary on the motion to receive as information? Mr. Santos.
So in reference to the motion, I mean, being that we're talking about cannabis, if I could just hear from our mayor and councillor on what is taking place in reference to the 5-point plan from Norfolk County.
Okay, let's deal with the motion, and then we'll give the opportunity to Mayor Chop or Councillor Huffman to discuss as they wish whatever was presented by Mr. Milson at their meeting. Anything further on the motion? Call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Over to you, Mayor Chop or Councillor Huffman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to update, so Mr. Milson did present, and I just want to clarify that the 5-point plan is from the region of York. We don't call it the 5-point plan here. Mr. Milson gave a very thorough report, and actually I wish I would have had my notes here in front of me. There were a lot of things that were in the request that Norfolk County is doing. There obviously is always room for improvement. I haven't received much feedback from the committee of Orville Slack and Ms. France since the presentation at council. There is a lot of communication with the bylaw department, and we do have one officer that is committed to the cannabis operations. During COVID, they did assign another bylaw officer to cannabis operations just because there were some things that bylaw couldn't be doing during the COVID shutdown. Anything else that you can think of, Mayor Chop? I'm kind of drawing a bit of a blank here. So I think it's too early in the morning for my head.
Now, to find out there, you know, I there's that clarification, you know, with all respect that we're doing in the county is actually quite similar to what's going on in York. So, you know, this constant sort of drumming 5-point plan, I think, you know, Mr. Milson sort of highlights that we've had enforcement, and you know, we have other municipalities that are regularly reaching out to Norfolk County to find out what we're doing. So we can spend time in council meetings to get all the 5-point plan, carry on doing what we're doing and having.
Thank you, both of you. If memory serves correctly, was there a motion to increase staff or put something in the 2022 budget for staff increase?
There is a discussion of a bylaw officer. It's been moved to budget time. So as that's, you know, competing priorities, I think that's one of the things that we can evaluate at that. I mean, perhaps it may make sense, you know, reduce a bylaw officer, but add an additional building inspector that would be on cannabis operations. Typically, up until now, it cannabis officer, there have been periods where him also assigned additional 0.5 over to those 5. So, and that will be discussed next year. Yes.
Thank you very much for that. And there was mention of a task force that exists or will be bolstered as well. Is that correct?
I've had a task force on the cannabis side to begin with. So again, you're looking at your law building and plan.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I certainly, when I saw the report from Mr. Milson, I certainly forwarded that to the other members of the Police Services Board so that they would be fully informed as what was being presented. And it was, as I say, a very fulsome and informative report. Quite a lot of activity taking place on that topic. So, anything further from the members? Mr. Sen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Worship and Councillor, I'm just looking at my notes of the June 8th, and the concern that I have is, I mean, the word illegal. From what I heard, there was 113 illegal cannabis operations taking place, I've read the letter from your staff. The concern that I have here is that ultimately Norfolk County is looking at a possible ad hoc committee or basis with reference to these issues. I mean, the major issue here, I believe, is that Health Canada needs to send their investigators down our neck of the woods and deal with this issue because it's a federal issue. The municipality, of course, is looking at this and doing the best they can. And I've spoken to the officers in regards to this, and that's all fine and dandy. But the word here we got to captivate is illegal. There's 113 illegal operations here. And I think it's up to the Police Services Board here to put forth a letter or at least some communication to Health Canada and let our minister up in Ottawa know that, listen, we haven't had one investigator down this neck of the woods that specifically deals with cannabis. And it sounds political, but we can talk the talk, but if we don't do anything and take the stand or at least some type of leadership on this issue, we're in trouble. I mean, speaking to Niagara, Wainfleet, they're looking to Norfolk for guidance, and they're looking to Norfolk for some type of hope. And we're giving them hope by saying, look, we're looking into this 5-point plan, we're doing the best we can, but everybody around this table, 113 illegal, the word's illegal, operations. And we're taking a stand of, okay, we're going to have an ad hoc committee, we've got the fire and bylaw. We should be pointing the finger at our federal government and the Minister of Health and asking for an investigator. I mean, they have 75 investigators. And if everybody can hear my voice, I'm frazzled. I'm upset. This is continuous. And I've been on the board for a year and a half, and all I hear is cannabis, cannabis. I speak to individuals that speak of fear, the smell, and so on and so forth, and here we go again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, you're more than welcome. I didn't see a motion in that whole narrative, but if you want to put a motion forward, we'll see where it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can put a motion that a letter be drafted, Mr. Chair, by the Police Services Board of Norfolk County to Health Canada, to the Minister, Patty Hadu, specifically outlining the issue that we have here, is the word illegal and the amount of. This is just not 13, this is 113. And I know Norfolk staff are doing the best they can, and I know our local OPP are doing the best they can with regards to the law, but we need to show leadership. And I think Norfolk can do that. So I put a motion that we send a letter requesting that one of these 75 inspectors come to Norfolk County and do their due diligence.
Thank you very much, Member Santos. Is there a seconder for that motion before we go into any discussion? Member Huffman seconds that motion. Discussion, you put the motion forward. Do you want to carry on further, or you've said enough?
If I may, Mr. Chair, you know, we can look at the OPP and you know, we can put blame, but unfortunately, we're putting blame on the wrong people. I believe the Minister of Health is well aware of this issue that has been brought up numerous times. We've had employees or bureaucrats from Ottawa speak to us. They're not listening, and they have to listen. And I think it's important, Mr. Chair, that, and I'll reiterate, it's summer. There's a lot going on, and we're dealing with COVID. I understand things are getting better, but those 75 inspectors that are out and about need to come out our neck of the woods. It's a beautiful neck of the woods, but we have to deal with this, and it's a grave concern. And I know it's an election year next year, municipally, so I make it very clear to our councillor, Councillor Huffman, and Mayor Chop, that this is something that needs to be dealt with, and it's important and it's urgent. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to the seconder first. Member Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Trevally. If I could just get a clarification as to what Member Santos meant in terms of it being an election year next year. I'm a little confused by that statement. If I could get a clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Huffman, I think what's happening out towards Waterford and your neck of the woods is they're frustrated. They're looking for leadership. They're looking at dealing with all of these issues. And if you talk to your constituents out that neck of the woods, Waterford and area, there are individuals that are living in fear. And just so that you're aware, next year, of course, being an election year, if you're wanting to be reelected, I would suggest that you take this seriously. And the reason I say that is because if I look back at my notes...
Point of order. Point of order. This
Okay.
is called for.
Hold on.
Absolutely uncalled
Member Huffman,
for.
hold on a moment, and I appreciate your feelings on this, because I sense that perhaps what Mr. Santos is trying to say, and perhaps not wording it correctly, is that it will be an issue next year. And I think that would have sufficed. But I do take your point of order, and you can carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Trevally. This is an issue that I have taken seriously since prior to my election, and this was on the minds of everybody. I have paid close attention to this issue, and I have brought forward to council to request an in-depth report from Mr. Milson. I have met with the individuals. I understand that there's frustration. And you just in one breath, Mr. Santos, stated that by law and the county are doing, and the local OPP are doing the best that they can. Where the ball has been dropped is with the federal government in terms of Health Canada, and that we have not had any inspectors down here. That is the motion that was on the floor, and that is the motion that I am supporting. I'm also, and then Mayor Chop can chime in as well. If I'm not mistaken, we've also had this conversation at council. This is an extremely important issue to everybody, and we're doing, in one breath we hear we're doing the best that we can, and then in the next breath, I'm being accused of not taking my job seriously. So anyways, I'm still quite appalled at Member Santos's comments. And if Mayor Chop would like to chime in terms of some of the discussions that we've had at council regarding Health Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Huffman, and I empathize and sympathize with your statements for sure. I do have a list, and the next speaker is Mayor Chop.
Yeah, I really resent well. Council.
Mayor Chop, if I can interrupt you for a second, you're breaking up, and it's hard to hear everything you're saying.
Chair Trevally, if you just give me a minute, I'll log on through your next speaker. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try to log on.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Van Houten. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm certainly with Councillor Hoffman on her feelings on this. That's not the way we should be doing things here. I'm just being frank and honest. There's lots of frustration on this issue, and I get it. I get it all the way around. The report, just Mr. Chairman, you brought it up earlier on the Mr. Milson report. I 100% agree with you. Thank you for forwarding everything to us. I think that work was excellent and really well done. When it comes to this whole issue, this whole thing was created by an absolute mess from the federal government in the first place. Let's be upfront and honest. There was glaring loopholes, there was major disconnects, and it's a mess. And normally, when you see problems, you can fix them relatively quickly, but with governments, it takes a lot longer. So we're still in this. So as far as sending a letter to the federal government, I do support that motion, because that's, I think, George, to your point, that's basically where it is. I do, though, totally respect as well my colleagues with council that they're doing the best they can in such a messy situation, and it's nothing that any one of us created, but we have to do the best within that. So I always hope for a very respectful tone amongst each other, and so I certainly wouldn't want anybody's feelings hurt on one of these things. But let's keep up the good work and do what we can, best we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Van Houten. And we'll go back to Mayor Chop on the motion or any other commentary you wish to make at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it goes beyond just council. I have made presentations about this issue specifically at every conference that I have attended, which has been annually to Roma, to AMO. I presented to the Attorney General on 2 separate occasions. I was in the Bear Pit in Ottawa. I had the Attorney General, in fact, acknowledge that I provided some suggestions that they hadn't even thought of looking at this from a provincial angle, because there are also things that the province could do through the College of Physicians for physicians that are overprescribing, for the individuals that are actually receiving these gigantic, 500 plant prescriptions. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Santos, besides stomping our feet and yelling, which is kind of how this 5-point plan keeps coming back, to council. It has to be the 5-point plan. It has to be the 5-point plan. We've had a lot of success in Norfolk County with enforcement and regulation. And I credit Jim Milson and our planning and our building staff, as well as our county solicitor, with being able to actually get some prosecutions that haven't been seen in other areas. So, this isn't just a Norfolk County problem. This is happening everywhere, but we are doing a lot in Norfolk County. In fact, I don't even think that you would, myself, having had an interest in the industry previously, with the confirmation of readiness for an LP, I think that I can speak relatively knowledgeable as compared to, a number of other politicians that are simply bureaucrats with no knowledge of the industry itself. So I guess I'd put the question back to you. What is it that you believe Councillor Huffman or myself should be doing differently? Because if we had the solution, we would be able to eradicate the problem across the province and the country. So I'm not sure what it is that you feel that we're not doing here in Norfolk County. Because I personally think that I've gone above and beyond, and I think Councillor Huffman has gone above and beyond as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't want to get members of the board into cross discussions other than what the motion on the floor states, please. I think that the comments by yourself, Councillor Huffman specifically, and Mr. Van Houten, and myself, I have the same feelings that perhaps Mr. Santos' comments could have been worded better. Certainly, as we look to the future, within 90 days there will be a federal election. Next June there will be a provincial election, and there will also be a municipal election. So that's the framework. But the motion is that the PSB send a letter to the Minister of Health, highlighting to her the issues in Norfolk County. Further discussion on the motion, please. Member Van Houten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support it, just as you pointed it out, that we send a letter to the federal government dealing with the issues, and because they have a lot to do with what the problems are here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And if the motion carries, certainly we'll have that drafted. And as I would like to proceed is to make sure that the board is pleased or at least satisfied with the wording that's in the letter. So we'll send the draft out first. And I'd like to also attach to that Mr. Milson's report, which is a public document now, just to give them more in-depth understanding of the issue. So any further comment and discussion on the motion, please? Member Santos.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, just to clear the air here, I'm pointing fingers at the federal government, and I know they've put the majority on municipalities, and I've heard what I've had to hear, and the concern that I have is just 113 illegal grow ops. That's the number that concerns me, and the word illegal. So I hope we all support the motion. Thank you.
For the second time, Mayor Chop.
Yeah, just to be clear, part of the problem, Mr. Santos, is that we don't actually know who has a designated grow license, who has, a personal cultivation license, how many plants are attached to that license. That was actually discussed during the presentation by Health Canada. So again, I believe in Mr. Milson's report, it stated that there was currently around 80 that were under possible investigation, but there's no actual confirmation that anything that's going on at those sites is necessarily illegal. You still could have somebody that is using that license for its proper purpose and consumption. So again, to say that, there are some definitive number of illegal cultivations in Norfolk County, I don't think, given the lack of information that we receive from the federal government on those licenses, that's what makes it very difficult for us and for the OPP to be able to say.
Thank you very much. And further discussions on the motion that's before us. And Aaron Platt, our administrator, has recorded the motion. And if anybody needs it reread, we can do that. No? So I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And as I indicated, I will send the draft forward for any editorial comment or inclusions that you, as the members of the board, wish to put forward. I do want to add my commentary to the issue now that the vote has been taken, and that is, I do believe firmly and truly that Norfolk County is dealing with this issue and all of its seriousness. That's evident by the report from Mr. Milson and the successes and challenges that were in that report, both for the Norfolk County staff, the council, and for ourselves here and our police service, the OPP. So, yes, we had Health Canada deputized in front of us. A lot of the issues were raised in terms of the lack of inspection by them, the lack of information being provided as to who has licenses, who doesn't, what are the prescriptions amounts, all of those things that are huge challenges, and not the least being a most recent court case where a number of charges were stayed or denied, and a lot of that was on the fuzziness of the legislation and what it allows. So yeah, it's a morass that has to be dealt with, but those are my comments, and I will make sure that the letter is drafted, that the members have a copy of it in its draft format, and you have the opportunity to comment on it, and we'll get that going as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. Moving on, then that takes us to the Monthly Statistical Report from the OPP, which starts on page 13 or 12, sorry, of your agenda. And I will ask if there are any questions to the inspector relative to the statistics that have been provided from members. Member Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question to our chief on page 23 of the agenda. Driver license suspensions. I noticed that, Mr. Chair, to our chief, that so far we have 40, including the month of May. This seems to be an ongoing problem. I'm just wondering if the chief could kind of enlighten us with regards to the driver's license suspension. I understand there's a loophole, a lot of individuals being charged with something and then given the vehicle to go back to drive.
No, a lot of the suspensions that you see here, they're all intertwined. I'm gonna be brutally honest. I've been off the road some time, and I'm more apt to be comfortable in this setting. Many of the suspensions, including the ADLS, are all intertwined with impaired driving and impaired by drug, and perhaps Staff Klingbeil can correct me. But we have considerably seen, as it's been mentioned in other meetings, we see a steady increase in impaired driving charges consistently, and it seems to be trending upward. Now, having said that, I think it's hard to discern whether the drinking and driving is actually increasing or our proactive efforts are increasing and we're seeing better results. It's the fact remains is that with our increased efforts, we still continue to get impaired drivers, whether that's impaired by drugs. So certainly those to have somebody drive their car away anymore, no, those days are gone. That's back many years ago where you got a 12-hour suspension and you reported the next day and got your car back. But all the suspensions are all intertwined in relation to whether it's through stunt driving, impaired charges. I don't know if Staff Clingwell can offer any further insight into that.
So just if you're asking...
Your microphone closer, please, Christina.
Sorry. So in regards to the ADLS, so that goes hand in hand with on page 22 in regards to the impaired charges where there were 60 impaired. The reason for the difference, so when someone is charged with the impaired driving, their license is suspended, but the difference is some of those impaired drivers might have not actually had a driver's license. So that can explain some of the differences. In regards to the 3-day, 7-day, and 30-day on page 23, so that's if someone's pulled over and fails the roadside when they provide a breath sample. So the first time that they do that, they're issued the 3-day suspension, the next time a 7-day, and then the third time a 30-day.
Mr. Chairman, can you please speak into the microphone, ma'am?
Further questions? Continuing, Mr. Santos.
If I may, Mr. Chair, to the Chief, and thank you very much for that explanation. On page 25, if I may also, on focus patrols, I noticed the top of focus patrols, it refers to current results indicated that 19 officers have dedicated 1,033.75 hours to this patrol. Is that including the foot patrol? Is that just foot patrol?
That's correct. That's just foot patrol throughout the county. I would suggest that a portion of that, because it's our largest center, is Simcoe, and then Port Dover. Certainly the 19 officers, that would be just count whoever's working that shift, and it could in fact be out of that 19 the same officer doing it shift after shift. So you're not going to see an increase in officers doing it. You're just going to see the officers, that officer doing more.
If I may, Mr. Chair, to our Chief, I know our neighbors to the east in Haldeman have a breakdown through little communities. So I'm just wondering if we could have a breakdown next time of Waterford, Langton, Port Rowan, Port Dover, Simcoe, Delhi, and Cortland, just to kind of have an understanding of the dedicated foot patrol in those towns. I know that our partners next door in Haldeman have done that, and I think it would help me out just to have a clear understanding if we're just focusing on Simcoe and Port Dover, or if we should have foot patrols in all areas.
We are having foot patrols in all areas. I will refer back to, at one time we did report on all those areas. I can't speak to why we don't do it now, but certainly through Mr. Chair, if that's something that the board wishes, we could. But again, I've been through various reporting cycles in the past. So.
Well, let's find out what the board feeling is. Commentary from the board members as to wanting more detailed information about foot patrols. I see Member Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Trevally. Yes, when I first joined the Police Services Board, there was a breakdown to each community and the number of hours per foot patrol, because I specifically recall some constituents wanting to know if there was foot patrol in Waterford. So I think it's just a case of it, you know, maybe new staff, different format, but it probably would be beneficial to go back to individual communities. I know that that would be beneficial to myself. Thank you.
You're welcome. Further commentary? Show of hands to feel that we should have further breakdown in terms of foot patrol. Please show your hands if you agree with that. We have a majority, so if you can
We can include that,
look
Mr.
at
Chair,
that, please,
in the,
Inspector Scott, and we'll look forward to the July statistics as they come forward, if that's
yeah, absolutely.
feasible and doable.
We can, Mr. Chair, we can include that in the board monitor issues as well.
Thank you very much. Turn off your microphone, sir. Anything further on the monthly statistics from our police services? I just want to make sure that that there is a clear understanding, continuing clear understanding that on the second page, at page 13, that the time allocated for overtime is not a distinct separate budget. That's just included in the budget, and it's a place marker so that we can monitor what's happening throughout the year. That's all that is. It's not a separate and distinct budget. If there is nothing further, I'd like to have a mover and a seconder to accept the report. Mr. Santos, Mr. Van Houten. Anything further? Call the vote. All in favor? That then takes us to the reports and discussions, information memo on the calendar of meetings. We know that the board did approve a bi-monthly schedule. We did skip 1 month, unfortunately, due to a lot of other things. Going forward, the next regularly scheduled meeting should be in August. Historically, however, we have taken a break for both of July and August, so I would like to have feedback from the board as to their feelings in terms of the taking the break for July and August and resuming in September. Of course, understanding that if there is an important issue, that the chair can call a meeting at any time, or the chair can be petitioned by a majority of members to hold a meeting. So those are always in our procedural bylaw, and that's how we could move forward. So any comment on Aaron Plant's calendar going forward, where the next meeting would be September 22nd at 9 o'clock? Comment? Mr. Van Houten?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good with that, with realizing that the chair can call a meeting at any time. So if there's one needed, that obviously he would do it. So.
If there's no further commentary, I need a mover and a seconder to accept that. Mr. Santos, Mr. Van Houten. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's carried. That moves us then to Detachment Commander Performance Evaluation. This is for your information at this particular time. The information is in the agenda for you. The current format being used is provided by the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. However, in conversations with the Executive Director, that document is under review. However, it stands as it is right now. We are not pressed at this point because Mr. Varga, Inspector Varga, has been deployed to another position and another situation. Our interim inspector, Mr. Scott, has not been here quite a year yet. So we have some time. So what I would suggest is that you take this on board, review it, what you know at this point about the performance of Mr. Scott, and just make any commentary, personal notes that you wish, and we'll bring this forward in the fall for further discussion, if that's all right. Any comment from the board on that approach? Mr. Santos.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chair. On page 32, I just wondered, it said February of 2012 on top of that page. My understanding is under Section 10, this has been in place since the police services boards have...
Yeah, but this is a document from the OAPSB, and that's the date that they put this document forward. Yes, but it has always been there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Any other comment? So going forward, make any personal notes you wish to make, and we'll bring this up in the fall again at the board's pleasure. Mover and a seconder, please. Santos. Van Houten. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving forward, then bursaries for retired community policing constables. A verbal update from Member Santos. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our members. This is further to an email that was sent to our members on June the 9th, and I think the email was pretty well 2 pages. It was pretty straightforward. Over the last year and a half, I've connected with 4 retired community police officers that served our municipality and Norfolk County, and of course Haldeman, Norfolk. And I was wondering, further to the email that I had put forth, I had mentioned the name of the officers, and those officers were also mentioned back in 2019, prior to Councillor Huffman attending the board. So what I'm looking at is putting forth a motion in the next few months. I know there was talk via the email going back and forth with reference to Crime Stoppers. I know Councillor Huffman mentioned that, and I believe it was Member Van Houten that had mentioned also not putting possibly a name to this award. So I'll leave it up to discussion. I'm not going to read out the email to everyone, but pretty well I'm looking at all schools. So I'm looking at Simcoe Composite School, Valley Heights Secondary School, Holy Trinity Catholic School, Waterford District School, and I believe Valley Heights, Delhi, and of course Fanshawe College. So I'll leave that up to discussion, Mr. Chair, to our members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just as a prelude before we get into this issue at any depth, we had a balance of $3,184, and we've now made a $2,000 donation to Crime Stoppers, which will diminish that amount. So having said that, I'll turn it over to over to board members for discussion. Member Van Houten.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of great people doing a lot, above and beyond, and so that's a good point you're making. As far as our budget is very, very limited, as we could tell even by what we gave to Crime Stoppers today, leaving a very, very minimal balance. So if you were to do something like this, then funds would have to be there year after year after year. So from a priority perspective, I'm not so, from my personal opinion, I couldn't go, I don't think it would be the wisest play right now, just from the financial end of it as well. And secondly, I think there has to be, when these type of things come up, a proper process in place for that. And that, sometimes that includes like a committee or the chief of police or the inspector being involved in that type of thing.
Let me interrupt you,
Yep.
Member Van Houten. My bad. Mr. Santos, is there a motion to put forward?
If I may, Mr. Chair, the motion was in the email. Basically, I'd like to put forth a motion that we, Norfolk County Police Services Board, allocate $250 per year per officer in the local high schools and community college with a grand total of $1,250 for each calendar year. That was the motion that I had put forth in the email. Now, the $250 can be reduced to $100 or $50.
Okay, but what is your motion, sir?
But my motion is to allocate $250
Per, for a total of?
A total of $1,250 for each calendar year.
Is there a seconder for that motion? I see no seconder for the motion. Motion fails. Is something else you want to add, Member Santos?
Well, I just wanted to add that this would have been a great opportunity for the Police Services Board to connect with the local schools, but I understand that the motion has failed, and so I'll leave it at that. Maybe in the future we could look at this again. I think it would be ideal, something positive in today's day and age. And the number 250 might be too high, but it's not to say it can't be 50. I mean, ultimately, it's important. I know these 5 officers, the late officer and the other officers, they dedicated their time, and of course, yes, they were paid for it, but they went over and above. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Huffman, I saw your hand. Did you want to say something at this point?
Thank you, Chair Trevally. Yes, I just wanted to make a point that I feel that the bursaries would be best left with Haldeman Norfolk Crime Stoppers. I feel that they meet the needs, and in terms of looking at the bursary that they were talking about in regards to the late Sergeant Arnett, that's where I feel that that our funds would be best served. It's completely subjective as to how an individual would come up with certain names. So I think, again, Mr. Van Houten had mentioned that there would be typically a committee for something like this. So I think we've gotten way ahead of ourselves with that, and it would be best served to be left with Haldeman Norfolk Crime Stoppers at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then moving on is a verbal update from Member Santos. He and I both virtually attended the annual conference of the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, and we also attended virtually the Zone 4 meeting of the association. So over to you, Member Santos, for the update on both of those events.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our members, just so that we're all aware, on May the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th, Mr. Chair and I attended these 3 days via Zoom. Now, they were half days. Because we're Section 10, either the afternoon was put forth to Section 10 or the morning would be put forth to the municipal police forces. So on May the 26th, we met, and of course, being under Section 10 policing, the half a day was from 12 till about 3:30. There was a lot of talk the first day with reference to board training. So a lot of what we're doing, of course, and there was a lot of focus on provincial appointees. There wasn't much mention of municipal employees or, let's put it this way, or councillors. It was more focused on provincial appointees and board training. With that, they went on and talked about Ontario, because of course, being the Police Services Board Association for Ontario, the issue with fentanyl and heroin. That was mentioned, and what stood out to me was when they referenced Haldeman Norfolk, the numbers, very appalling. 2019, we had 11 fentanyl, heroin overdoses, and then in 2020, we had 20 deaths. And looking at this, their focus was to talk of enforcement, education, crime suppression, and of course, then there was also reference that day, the first day, with regards to the evaluation of the commander. So of course, on page 34 to 45 of our agenda, there's reference of this. And of course, this being our commander would be our police chief and the evaluation. So I think in the next few months, Mayor Chop and Councillor Huffman and to our provincial appointee, Mr. Van Houten, I think it's important, and Mr. Chair, that we focus on this evaluation, because from what I understand, from what I heard from other Section 10 policings, it's imperative, and I didn't know that the detachment commander had a regional commander. So there's these levels, and it's important that the regional commander is well aware of what's happening and what the Police Services Board feels of their police chief, as we refer to, and knowing that it's the commander. So that was the first day. Now, Chair Trevally, do you have any other things to add in reference to the first day for the few hours that we had via Zoom?
Certainly, I reiterate to the commentary made by Member Santos that the focus was on training, and the regulations that are necessary and fall out of the new Community Safety and Policing Act, which has not received in its entirety royal assent as yet, and they're looking to the first quarter of 2022 for that to happen. So they're preparing all the regulations, and the focus on training of all board members will be imperative. And I'm not sure how that will roll out. It may affect, in some degree or another, participation from the various councils around Ontario, because in some respects the PSB mix is different than it is here. There is great discussion, and we'll have that coming up shortly, about the composition of boards. And the focus fundamentally on that was where there are a true county or region where you have multiple municipalities underneath a region or a county chair. They're looking to have one board instead of multiple boards. So there's a lot of discussion about the regulations, and the topics range from training through to and including composition of the boards, and we'll discuss that in a moment or two. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then the second day, May the 28th, what we found with a lot of our members were...
Excuse me, Mr. Van Houten, did you want to talk about that?
Just specifically to what you were bringing up, Mr. Chairman, on the training component, maybe George, did you get it as well? I got it from the province that we had to take that training thing, which I did right away. I think it was, I believe it was April, or it was somewhere in there. So I did, it was like on governance. It was actually really well done, but not as valuable when you're doing it just on video. Sometimes, because you learn a lot from talking to one another in a lot of those training sessions. So you didn't quite get that with doing it, but I know I did it. You probably had the same one, or maybe you had done it earlier. They even gave me kind of a deadline on it, kind of deal. So I just did it right away. But
the focus is to make sure that the board members understand their roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities, and all of that. Governance was a big piece. I think there were 10 sections of the overall training program, of which those 4 were fundamentally important. And it is virtual, and that does detract a bit from it, but a lot of good information. Sorry, Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to answer Mr. Van Houten, just to let you know, Willie, it was a 3-hour Zoom, and it was a test. And of course, it took me approximately 3 hours, and there was a deadline, I believe, of 3 weeks. It was very intense. I don't know if you found it very intense, but it dealt with governance, and a lot of it is common sense, but you know, common sense isn't common anymore, but that's pretty well it in regards to that. But just to add, so on May the 28th, the following day, so to the mayor and councillor, and to our provincial appointee and Mr. Chair, and to the police here, with Zooming, we don't connect around a table. We're all on a computer. So these individuals out in Chatham didn't have internet, so they were over the phone. So we had a picture of the individual who was listening through, where beforehand, in my past experience being in London, we'd be around a table of 10 individuals from different counties sharing information and, of course, making great contacts. With the Zooming, it's very unfortunate, but I mean, we have what we have in front of us. So just to add, we had another half day of Section 10, and that was from 9:30 till about 11:15. And just so that everyone is aware, the Police Services Board now has another arm, which is referred to the Ontario Inspector General of Policing. So in October of 2020, I believe our provincial government appointed Mr. Devin Clennis as the Inspector General of Policing, and I believe in November of 2020 we had an Ontario Deputy Inspector General of Policing. So these 2 individuals were previous police chiefs. One, I believe, was a police chief from Winnipeg, which was the first one. The second one, I believe, was the Deputy Police Chief of Hamilton, if I'm not mistaken. And their focus on police services boards basically is the trust, the respect, the humility, the courage and the wisdom that's put forth, and basically that modern approach. When I look at my notes, basically they went back to the learning and Section 10 training and reiterating what was said the day prior. So that pretty well brings out that the Ontario Association of Police Services boards want us to be trained and well-informed with regards to policing. Now, of course, with Section 10 policing, very different from municipal policing, and they're dealing with budgets and human resources, where we're dealing with the chief of police, and we're with stats and numbers, and where we put forth, of course, as we know, information to our chief. So that was pretty well the second day, and it was more also in reference to the elections, and there was elections put forth for the Ontario Association of Police Services boards, and those elections took place on the 27th. And with that, Mr. Chair, do I have have I missed anything, or do you want to add anything else to that?
No, you've done very well, Mr. Santos.
To quickly carry on, ultimately, at the end of the day, the same issues that we're having here in Norfolk, Windsor's having with cannabis, fentanyl, speeding, what's happening up north in North Bay, those issues might be somewhat different, but there's a lot of similarities with reference to Section 10 policing. And again, this seems to be a great learning curve with regards to our chief and commander, which of course is the detachment, where they refer to as the detachment commander. We here refer to as the police chief. Same title, just different names. That's my understanding. And in reference to that, just to sum up, it was interesting to note that change is coming down the tubes from the Ministry of Solicitor General in regards to the board training, and I think that training is optimal and it is going to definitely help us. But if we're looking at next year, there's still going to be a lot of change in the works, but hopefully by October, November of 2021, things will be in place. And that's pretty well my report to sum up. I believe the minutes will be sent out of this Ontario Association of Police Services Board in the next week or two. So when I receive them, what I'll do is I'll forward them off to the chair, and then the chair could attend it or put it forth to the agenda in September. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you carry on and talk about the Zone 4 meeting, I just want to make sure that everyone understands the change that we have recently had in our administrator. Aaron and I met and had a good chat, and he is making sure that Zone 4 administration and OAPSB administration have all of his contact information, so hopefully we won't miss out on anything as it flows through from those levels. But you want to carry on, Mr. Santos?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So that sums up pretty well the association provincially. Now, the next thing on the agenda, Mr. Chair, is Zone 4. So if you want, I can continue on with Zone 4. But to our members, with reference to Zone 4 and to our local OPP, on page 46, 47 are the minutes of our June the 2nd meeting. And of course, at that meeting, I referred in reference to Norfolk County and what was happening with regards to the illegal grow ops. And that was more for information, because I believe Niagara has been dealing with the same issue, and they have communicated and worked with Norfolk County in that regards. And I believe Wainfleet was having a major issue with that. So we're all on the same page in regards to that. And in reference to Zone 4, as everyone can see, 21 people attended Zone 4, which is on page 49. Well attended. The meeting lasted approximately 2 hours, and this is basically what we dealt with. And it went back to ministry updates. So those updates, of course, have been forwarded on to our chair, Chair Trevally, and that's pretty well all I can say with regards to Zone 4. They shared their concerns, and pretty well the same concerns that we have in Norfolk County, Mr. Chair. So if there's any questions from the members of the board, I'd be willing to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Santos. Questions directed to Member Santos or myself on either the conference or the Zone 4 meetings? Seeing none, I'll accept, please, a mover and a seconder to accept the reports, the verbal reports from Mr. Santos on the conference and the Zone 4 meetings. Mover, Mr. Member Van Houten. Seconder, Mr. Santos. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. That takes us then to the action plan 2020 to 2022. I'm going to ask Inspector Scott to speak to that in a moment. Just a bit of background for that. The Police Services Board, through a consultation process with both council, the OPP and its strategic policing plan, and the community policing committee that is in place now, developed a strategic plan. The strategic plan was approved by PSB last fall. Then the next step in that would be to then have the local detachment provide an action plan or a tactical level plan to merge with that and tell us how they were going to do things that were in the strategic plan. It is before you today and included in the minutes. I'm not expecting you to approve it today or anything like other than that. I certainly give you time to reflect on it, read it, provide any commentary or ask any questions you wish, and funnel those through Aaron, please. And then Aaron will share those with myself and the other board members. And then in September, hopefully we will say thank you very much. We'll approve it. But right today, the motion will be simply to receive it as information and take it on board. So over to you, Inspector Scott. Any commentary you want to make about the operational or action plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly for brevity, I'm not going to read the entire plan and its full contents. If you just look to it, it identifies it leaves a lot. Certainly, I didn't prepare this plan. It was done through Inspector Varga and his team. If you just look to it, the primary areas of concern organizationally and locally are through crime, roadways, trails, and waterways, and other things. And the other is usually, you look at various things and like to identify co-response solutions for non-police related demands for service and impacted police resources. We've talked about this at all the board meetings here, especially when you look to the inclusion of collaborative response, the 5-point plan with bylaw, all the actions that are taken. So I'll leave that to your review. When you look at what's been identified in crime and the actions section, those are just a guideline. They're not all encompassing of what we do, but certainly when you look to the crime actions, a lot of the actions certainly the commitment to place a high priority on reducing victimization resulting from break-and-enters offenses, thefts, mischiefs, and others. It's just not committed to break-and-enters or property crimes, but certainly you can see the actions that we've partaken. It's really hasn't been unchanged for many years. Norfolk County's always been well positioned from my experience, and having worked elsewhere, continues to be a leader in Norfolk County just because of the advantage and the certainly the collaboration from the Police Service Board, the support from councils and all our service partners. So what I intend to do is I'll just kind of give you maybe an overview of where we sit with some of these from trend analysis, and I think that would give you a better perspective because I know many of these things have been utilized in past action plans as well, and certainly we will be reporting back. I spoke to business and planning there a few weeks ago and communicated that through Mr. Chair, that there will be a continued, this is a living document, and so, when you look to our progress report, we will look to show you how we've done in relation to these strategies, and certainly they're open, as I said, for more inclusion to things like a more fulsome inclusion of local county bylaw and other strategies that we continue to develop and employ. So is there any questions just in the nature of that before I kind of get on to, I'll just give you a sense of overview in our trends for the last 5 years, and it'll be very brief.
If you just want to carry on, and
Okay.
really what I was hoping to is have the members take it away, look at it.
That's fair. So, Mr. Chair, just to kind of give the board a sense, and it touches all throughout, it's all interwoven throughout this action plan, is that I'll kind of give you a snapshot where we kind of sit from 2016 to current, given the fact that current, the last year, some of the numbers have been impacted through COVID and that, but when you look at our 5-year violent crime trend, and I'll kind of get to a few of the subcategories, not all, but they've remained unchanged over the last 5 years. It's been relatively consistent. I would say like a plateau throughout Norfolk County, which is good. Assaults seem to be trending down based on a 5-year trend. Domestics continue to, we see a slightward, very slight, a slight trend upwards, and certainly, you know, domestics in my experience are always sort of driven through social pressures, and there's a lot of mitigating factors, addiction, mental health, you know, too many to name. When you look at property crime trends, again, I think Norfolk County's done an excellent job here. They, again, over a 5-year period, they've remained virtually unchanged. You know, you see fluctuations, but it's better to remain unchanged than to see certainly trending upwards. Of course, we always want to see things trend downwards, but B&Es, though, we do see a downward trend in break and enters. Frauds, we do see somewhat of an increase in trend over the last 5 years. Some of that is, you know, through a lot of education. We're encouraging people, as we did with mental health, to call us, to report that, and certainly we're seeing that influx of cyber crime and computers and technology to commit crimes, and that's one of the things that you will see that our engagement through our recent action plan. Mischiefs continue to trend downwards. Theft from motor vehicles, a slight upwards trend, but not significant. Again, theft of motor vehicles and theft under offenses, again, not significant trending. Illicit drugs, this is a very difficult one to kind of predict because most of our statistics are garnered through proactive enforcement. Certainly I've been in policing a very long time, and I'm very alive to the fact, and we all know sitting around the table here, that drugs are prevalent. It's our ability to navigate those waters and take enforcement action. So we have seen a bit of a trend down in what our reports are. However, some of that, in my opinion, has been impacted through the legalization of marijuana, like the legalizing of it, and changes to legislation surrounding that, and also the continued challenges that face our drug investigators when it comes to seeking judicial authorizations to take appropriate action. Regarding the trails waterways component, again, this is all great news stories, I think, for, again, not just Norfolk County OPP, but Norfolk County Board and Council, where we see our all motor vehicle collisions seem to be trending downwards. I'll speak to why in a minute, at least my opinions why. Our personal damage motor vehicle collisions, again, it's remained unchanged, which is, again, sort of a plateau. Our non-fatal collisions and fatal injury collisions, again, are trending downwards, which is, that's what we want. We don't want people injured on our roadways. A lot of the things that you see, these downward trends, are through things like the support of speed spy technologies through this board as well as our Norfolk County Traffic Safety Committee. Again, a collaborative approach to enforcement. We now see a collision reduction plan in place that you see through focused patrols, and you see numerous impaired driving speeders come out of those areas that have been identified through our use of analytics. Our e-tickets, our e-ticket system that we just rolled out makes it much more efficient for officers to issue tickets right from the side of the road, and it also assists us to capture areas through analytics as to where the speedings occurred and where our patrols are taking place. And that kind of leverages and goes hand in hand with where we're conducting our focus patrols. That is always near and dear to my heart. Again, Ed Sanchuk, Ed's a big factor in this through our public education. Ed's amazing at what he does, and certainly our continued, listening to our community, trying to address perceived, speeding areas, identify them, help the community through that, and through our participation in both provincial and local traffic initiatives, which Canada Day's coming up now. Certainly through technologies and changes of process at our Provincial Comm Center, we've seen a reduction, a trend down in our 911 calls for service, which is allowing officers to be on the road and not tied up to dropped calls. And again, through the efforts of our Comm Center and our local governance, and we've seen alarms trending downwards as well. Our impaireds, I'd like to say our impaireds were trending downwards, but they are trending upwards, as I've mentioned. But I think part and part, you see officers have been freed up. They're out there making quality stops, not quantity, and it's translated into license suspensions. That's, through our focus patrols, proactive enforcement, and our rides, and certainly our ongoing development of the Drug Recognition Expert Officer Program. We're seeing more individuals stopped for impaired by drug, which again, that's a new. Most of us were around when impaired through Mothers Against Drunk Driving was big. Now they've got a whole new, like we're dealing with the illicit marijuana grows. We're also dealing with impaired by drug and other factors. I think a really good news story, and I was around and was part of it initially, is with Inspector Horvat and Staff Tout, is our response to mental health in Norfolk County. And I can tell you, having worked in other areas, it's challenging to try and get these programs working. Our mental health calls for service, and this speaks volumes to our MCERT program, our mobilization officer, Jay Eberly, and certainly the situation table and the many partners that sit in the collaborative approach that we take with other agencies in the county is trending downwards. That's not to say that we still don't have mental health and addiction issues, and that intertwines with some of our certainly property-related crimes, but and certainly there's a whole social, economic reasons for some of this as well. But again, the engagement and enforcement aspect is I think, proving dividends here. And again, many of the things that are in place in this action plan are things that we've collectively done in the past. And I can provide a few updates in relation to other matters, Mr. Chair, when you provide direction. So if there's any questions,
Thank you very much, Inspector. And go to the members of the board. Any commentary on what the Inspector has just raised? Again, just to reiterate, the objective today is to bring it to your attention, have you look at the document over a period of time, and then when we if you have comment or questions, send those through to our administrator, Aaron Plant, and we'll get the feedback at that point. So right now, anything from the board members on what the inspector has just presented to us? Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Chief Scott, so just so that I understand clearly then, so with regards to mental health, it's been a big challenge for many years, but from 2016 till now, with the assistance of Jay working in town and having the officer have, I believe is a psychiatric nurse or a social
Yeah,
worker?
they're our mobile crisis rapid response team, our mental health professional.
And is that 24/7 or is that just?
No, it's not 24/7, but it's they're working 7 days a week. But again, one of the things organizationally for the past several years is, yeah, it would be great to have somebody 24/7. That's really goes without saying, but certainly to fill those gaps. And again, I'm proud to say I was part of it with Inspector Horvat. Is when we when we looked at how our officers are deployed here, and I think that we've seen the fruits of the labor, is that we were one of the first detachments that actually kind of blended a few models and put the MCERT worker with our frontline members that were different all the time. So we've got a lot of cross training that goes on every day. Our new recruits spend time with our MCERT worker. Our senior officers spend time, and it's just it's a normal part of our business. They're part of our team, and you know, they provide support to our members too. You know, they always check in on me, which I'm sometimes grateful for. Perhaps sometimes after police service board meetings, but no, it's a fabulous program that we have here, and it can only get better through time, I hope. But I do speak with great experience that Norfolk County is light years ahead of other municipalities when it comes to this.
Forward, sir.
If I may, Mr. Chair, also to our chief, you spoke of Acting Sergeant Sanchuk. I just wanted to make a point here. I think it's an asset that the OPP have Acting Sergeant Sanchuk. I mean, just thinking back to a number of motor vehicle accidents, but more importantly, what just took place in Turkey Point with that lost young 8-year-old, where I believe Acting Sergeant Sanchuk took us through that from Saturday to Sunday, and it was well done. So if you could pass on from the Police Services Board, Mr. Chair, if it could be, just telling him thank you on behalf of Norfolk County and enlightening the family and also the province of Ontario of what took place that day. It was well done. Thank you.
Further comment on what the inspector has provided to us at this point? Okay, before I go back to the inspector and have him add a few added items that he and I have discussed, I want to make it absolutely clear that the tactical or operational plan that has been provided, people see the police as a reactionary force. The crime happens and they respond. When in fact, there's a huge proactive component, and the inspector mentioned that, and that's highlighted in our strategic plan, that we want to see proactive policing. And the proactivity comes through partnerships, absolutely, comes through partnerships, reaching out and communicating with people. It comes with the patrolling, it comes with the foot patrols and the data that is provided where the inspector will dictate the vehicle patrols, that kind of thing. So the Crime Stoppers as a partnership, the Community Policing Committee as a partnership, ourselves, the Health Department, the Bylaw Department of Norfolk County, all of those partnerships feed into the proactivity of policing. And most recently, both Member Santos and I had a lengthy discussion on the development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And there's another plan that's going to be put in place by Norfolk County that will supplement and support the policing in this community. You know, when you phone 911, you get 3 choices: police, fire, ambulance. In my world, there should be a 4th choice: health. This is a health issue. We've spent a good deal of time, and previous members around this board, looking at how do we move officers' time to the front line. And we looked at false alarm bylaw reduction. We've looked at not chasing around for barking dogs, you know, and wild animals, and those are not policing issues. And so we've tried to move that time and effort to the front line as much as possible. And we see from our statistics that a great deal of time is taken up with issues around mental health. I won't deny that there may well be a criminal component to that, or a safety component where only the police can provide that safety component. But, you know, the people above us in terms of government have to really look at this in a new light. You know, we hear it coming out of the United States about defunding the police. That's not my mantra. If I see anything, it's making sure that the police are doing the things that they're supposed to do, and other people do the things they're supposed to do. And I'm very pleased when I sat around this table in another capacity with Inspector Norm Dankert and then Inspector Horvath and then Joe Varga and yourself, sir, is driving toward that end, making sure police are doing police work. And both from a reactionary and a pro-action perspective. So those are my comments at the moment. So take this document on board, look at it, provide your comments and or questions through Aaron Plant, our administrator, and then he will feed those back out, and we can then in our resuming our meetings in September, we can officially then bring that on board. So one moment, Inspector. Member Van Houten.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm impressed by your comments and how you articulated that. And I feel exactly the same way. And, you know, there's like a major collaborative work, and the communications, how important it is. And from a rookie guy, I'm impressed when I'm around here. I really have to admit. So I think you articulated it really well. Just giving you my own rookie perspective kind of deal, but it's impressive. And how they, like this plan, you know, I read through it, you know, and I have to go a couple times through it in order to grasp it, you know, 100, you know, and then see. But I'm just impressed by everything about it. And sometimes it's just, you know, it's words, but in here, like they practice these, you know, you're doing it, like the amount of collaboration, and, you know, that kind of thing. No, I'm impressed.
Yeah, and it is a live document. Let's be sure about that. You know, it can be adjusted and changed as we move forward. I'm not sure about OPP headquarters and their flexibility in this regard, but having said that, it belongs to us. It belongs to Norfolk County, and that's what we're trying to do. Before I go to the inspector, Member Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to that, I mean, it's pretty clear. If we look at page 128, the programs and the services, it speaks for itself. And I mean, to just talk about the last few weeks, I mean, on page 128, the last few weeks, there was a number of issues out on the lake. Within a span of minutes, hours, community members just looking out at helicopters, police, it's that reassurance of safety. I've heard from people that live out in Long Point and Turkey Point of the tremendous work that took place on those days, not only with the 8-year-old and the missing boater, and I believe the 2 individuals that are out on the lake. That is important. It's reassuring. And I think Norfolk County, with the contract that we have, we're doing very well. But again, on page 128, if we just look at all these services and the resources, is unbelievable. So the only thing we can say is thank you. And to the taxpayer out there, we're getting a good bang for our buck, so to speak, with regards to this. So, you know, when we pay our taxes, let's be reassured that in reference to policing and all these services, that we are reassured each and every day of the safety and the role of the Police Services Board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Santos. And just to be clear, while it appears to everyone to be a very seamless cohesion of services that are provided through the Ontario Provincial Police and then through our detachment commander, there are divisions in the hierarchy of the Ontario Provincial Police, such that the Marine unit is not a component of your detachment. You can call upon them, and we don't say to the Marine unit, you do this, you do that, because they service quite a large area. The same goes for if we need the helicopter, or if we need dogs here. We don't have dogs that are stationed here in Norfolk anymore, I don't think. We used to have one. But it looks very seamless, and that's important.
That may change, Mr. Chair.
Those services are provided to us through that contract. So I want to have the inspector also talk about more granular issues, if he will, about things that like Friday 13th and parade season, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one other note, just on the mental health response, and I forgot to mention, and you sparked my memory here, is that at our provincial communication centers in Ontario and the OPP, we actually have crisis workers available. So So what's happening is if someone calls in and they appear to be in crisis, they can be diverted to speak to that member and then put in to the appropriate resources. That's not to say that certainly police won't be dispatched, but certainly it may mitigate that, and it's proven very, very useful. And just in relation to the drowning, I know there's been a lot of talk. We talk about mental health and wellness, but certainly after that, Staff Klingbeil, the drowning incident, enacted our local crisis response support for our officers, of which we have psychologists on staff now, and Chris did a fabulous job bringing one of them down with our peer support, and just engaged with our officers, did a check-in, and just to keep the officers well and engaged so they're ready for duty. So one of the things I would like to just speak to very quickly is, and I mentioned to Chair Trevally, is we have a few of our officers here in Norfolk County. They are wearing body-worn cameras as part of a test, a provincial test. Haldeman officers have been wearing them. I'm just going to very quickly read the media release. It will give you the kind of the quick meat and potatoes of it, but I thought it incumbent upon me to have that discussion since there are officers in the county wearing these cameras.
Stop you there, Inspector. I have two distinct motions here, and one is I want to conclude the issue on the operational tactical
okay,
plan.
sorry, my apologies, Mr. Chair. I can flip to the other one there.
Based on the operational plan, if you will discuss issues such as Friday 13th and parade season, then we can move on to the body-worn cameras.
My apologies. So it wasn't, I didn't need a motion for my own list. So, so just to keep everyone up to speed, the Pottahawk Marine event is scheduled for the 11th of July, 2021. Plans are well underway with a variety of resources, both federally and provincially on the water. There certainly is a land presence for enforcement of things on the land, as well as enforcement and education out on the water. So that's well underway with Chuck Schneider, our Marine coordinator. He had big shoes to fill many years ago, taking over from Jim Milson, and he's taken it to another level from Jim. As far as Canada Day Parade, I have received nothing from my end, and certainly I know just through my conversations with county contacts that I think, and I don't know if council is aware of anything, but I don't think we're looking at Canada Day Parade at this time, unless that changes. PD 13, the plans continue to be underway. We had a meeting yesterday with the PD 13 committee, just trying to go through some final plans like we have in the past, of which I've been very involved with in the past myself. Certainly, I'd like to thank those decisions made by our local council and mayor to keep this as a non-event per se, and really what that means is the non-issuance of vendor permits. It's still a moving target. Hopefully, we're going in the right direction as far as COVID-19, but we full as a group. I'll speak for the group in this case. We still fully anticipate people coming, although it's certainly not desirable for a lot of reasons. However, I do understand the challenges that our local council and that in relation to reopening the community and businesses and all those things. I think what you can anticipate seeing is a very common strategy like we've used in the past as far as traffic management and police presence, as well as EMS response. It should pretty much stay the course. There will be a few changes, but that's we'll deal with those as they come. Like I say, we're working through our PD 13 committee, and they're taking our recommendations and asks forward through to council as the normal process. That's really all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And our conversations that we've had, I was informed that there are more recruits posted in. So are we up to where we're supposed to be?
I will defer that to Staff Klingbeil.
Yeah, so we just had 5 recruits that arrived on June 4th, and in September we'll have 3 more that'll be arriving, so we're getting close.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And so is there any further comment on what we've just heard from the inspector relative to the action plan and the subsidiary issues? Member Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To our Chief Scott, so what I want to understand then, so for Friday the 13th, the OPP are still planning to be there, their presence. And my understanding, from what I've heard, is, I mean, so we're preparing for the worst, but expecting the best.
Mr. Santos, we've been doing that for years here with PD 13, in fairness, not to be flippant or anything. Yes, I know through Inspector Varga that the carriage of this has transferred over to the county through the PD 13 committee, of which we are part of, and I think we're very well positioned to respond to it. It's a, you know, I know that communities' challenges have been, you know, with COVID, that, you know, hosting major events and all these things, and it's a very precarious position we find ourselves in, because, you know, if we do nothing, we know people, depending on where we lie, and I think Ontario's opening up, that it's that community safety, it's public safety, the COVID, there's a lot of moving parts on this, so it's better to be looking at it than looking for it, is what we kind of say. So we are preparing for it, as we have many times. It's a tremendous group with the fire chief and roads and a variety of health, everyone that's at the table, and we're all collectively doing our best to, it's probably, I've been involved in PD 13s for probably 25 years in some capacity, whether that was on foot patrol or what have you, and just because of the, you know, the COVID, the pandemic, and those things, it's probably one of the most challenging, quite frankly, because we knew what would happen before on an August in the summer when we didn't have a pandemic. This year, well, we don't know. So, but we do know people will likely come.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, and I'll put the inspector on notice that moving forward, communications relative to whatever's planning is happening with PD 13, let us know. Certainly monitoring council and committee minutes and whatnot, agenda. I haven't seen any requests for road closures at this point, which is an official process that has to take place. So, having said all of that, I need a mover and a seconder to accept as information the Detachment Commander Action Plan. Member Santos. Member Van Hoot. I'm sorry. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Then that moves us to the body-worn cameras, Inspector.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully I've piqued some interest with my early start out of the gate on that one. I'll just review our news release that was put out. It's very informative and very high level. The Ontario Provincial Police has began a year-long evaluative study of body-worn cameras. Beginning on the 25th of May of this year, the OPP has equipped members of the Haldeman Detachment, members of OPP West Region Emergency Response Team, and the members of our West Region Traffic Incident Management Team, our time teams, of which they are active in Norfolk County from time to time, with body-worn cameras. This study will help inform broader OPP implementation of new technologies in the future. OPP officers participating in this evaluative study will have the body-worn camera in plain view, and the camera has lights and indicators showing it has been activated. Officers are trained to give notice as soon as reasonably possibly that a body-worn camera is in operation. OPP officers participating in the study will turn on the camera prior to arriving at a call for service at the earliest opportunity, prior to any contact with a member of the public, and where the contact is for investigative or enforcement purposes. The body-worn camera will be turned off when the call for service or investigation is complete. The OPP has conducted a comprehensive review of policies and procedures developed by our partner police agencies as it relates to the use and privacy impacts of body-worn cameras. Procedures have been created to address potential privacy concerns and to ensure the security of video once it has been recorded during the course of this study. The OPP supports the implementation and use of tools or technologies that enable collecting better evidence, demonstrate greater accountability and transparency, and enhance public and officer safety in the communities we serve. I'm not going to profess to being an expert on the body-worn camera, and there's only so much that I can quite honestly say because it is an investigative tool. What I will say is why the reason it went to Haldeman is because obviously we had a demonstration that was ongoing. It was kind of an opportunity to look because there was a lot of interaction, a lot of for a variety of, whether it's positive, negative, high threat, low threat, and what have you. And at that time, Haldeman officers were there, and it was occurring in their area, and our emergency response team was deployed there for a considerable amount of time. So that's why they were chosen. We have some of our members of our emergency response team here in Norfolk County, and we will have assistance from Haldeman officers as well, come over from time to time as well. So why body cameras? They capture a more accurate record of police officer encounters with the public, enhance public trust and police legitimacy, enhance public and police officer safety, strengthen the commitment to bias-free service delivery by officers to the public, protects officers from unwarranted accusations of misconduct, provide improved evidence for investigative, judicial, and oversight purposes, provides additional supervisory and leadership tools, and provides information as to the effectiveness of service procedures and training. I know I sat in on the initial training for it. It is what I will say is that it's just a device that is clipped on the officer's vest. It's about the size of a cell phone. There's an assigned cell phone that goes with it. And what will happen, like as I mentioned, the officer will become engaged, traffic stop or a call, whatever, they will activate it. And it's GPS connected, it's everything. So then that will ultimately start recording, however that looks. Certainly when you respond to, there are procedural issues where the officers for privacy, for victims' rights, a whole myriad of procedures where it won't be activated because of those things, and there's a lot of privacy concerns and certainly disclosure aspects that have to be navigated. But just on the face value, it will afford an officer, and we have used it here on a recent kind of weapons call / mental health call, and the officer they had the ability then to dictate their notes, the statement, everything gets uploaded to a cloud, then it gets transferred over if it's a criminal matter into our electronic scope. So it's really driving a lot of efficiencies. It has the ability to link up to text where members of the public can send photos or things to us. I don't know all the moving parts to it yet, but it is, I think it's going to be, from a management perspective, when you look at officer accountability, we'll know what happened, but it'll also, I think, save when we have, and it does happen from time to time, where we have members of the public provide, unfounded complaints against our officers, and that activates a whole chain of accountability structures like SIU or OIRPD and our own professional standard services, not to mention informal discipline that Chris and I and John would undergo. So it's new right now. There'll be more. Stay tuned. It's being well received by our officers, and I don't know, Chris, do you have anything that you could add to that maybe?
No, I think you covered it all there.
So just kind of a high level at this point, more of an awareness piece for the board, but certainly this is, when you look at OPP deployment of this, it's like many things. When we deploy it, it may work in Norfolk County, it may not work in Grey County, it may work in the Northwest. So there's a lot of challenges geographically, and And certainly, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're certainly leveraging some of the municipal agencies that have gone down this road and that. This is again, it'll be part of equipment. It's not something, as I said to Chief Trevally, that the county's going to get a bill. Here's a bill for all these things. Indirectly, yes, municipalities do pay for it, but it's like a cruiser. It's like our guns. It's a piece of equipment that's covered. So there's not, unlike a municipal force, there's no billable item on your budget. It will be in there. I'm not naive enough to know it's intertwined in the cost, but it's not something that has to be addressed in that capacity. So, any questions?
Questions, comments from board members? Member Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Chief Scott, so how many do we have in Norfolk County?
For
officers?
operational reasons, I'm not going to disclose the exact amount, but we have more than one.
Okay. So this is just the beginning. My next question is video. Are the OPP looking at possibly putting video in the police cruisers?
I tried to look. I seem to recall, but I won't confirm this. I think that would be considered a next step. We have to work through this process first. And one of the biggest challenges is data storage and data retrieval and data and all the legalese surrounding that. And that's huge. And and certainly integrating that in with our judicial partners as well. But I would suspect that on a next step as we progress, we've gone to tasers, we've got it's just a progression. Now we're at this now body worn cameras. I would suspect that yes, we would eventually get to there, but I really don't know the answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, Chief Scott, so are we like the second or the third detachment in Ontario with body cameras, or is I know it's a pilot project, so it's just Haldeman Norfolk at this point in time?
No, it's just Haldeman Detachment frontline uniform officers and a contingent of our emergency response team members that are deployed from Norfolk.
Okay.
So when I wasn't trying to be like, we only have a few emergency response team members here in Norfolk County, so it's very minimal. Those officers are attached here.
Thank you very much.
Further from members? I will say, and this will be news to you, Inspector, in looking at this issue, and I know that it's predominantly a Haldeman-driven test. There are some officers that work in Norfolk, so the impact on Norfolk at this point is minimal. However, I will be speaking to the Executive Director of the OAPSB, and my concerns focus on contractual relationships and ownership of the data and the obligations of PSBs in terms of any complaints about officer impropriety and those types of things, just to make sure that all of that has been discussed at some point at the very high levels and it's clear, because municipal policing, totally different in terms of the police chief and the body and the PSB role and that type of thing. Contracting a little differently because contract law comes into play and the master-servant relationships and all of that. But when it affects perhaps Norfolk County, I want to make absolutely sure that all of those things have been discussed at the highest level. So just let you know that. Okay?
Just to reassure you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I understand with the OPP we have borderless policing. So we've got Haldeman and Norfolk and we share our services. So you're making this clear to the association?
Yeah, I'll be corresponding with Fred, the executive director, just to make sure that the data collected by body-worn cameras or any other subsequent future collection of data takes into account the contractual relationship that we have, which is different from, dramatically different from standalone municipality policing and the role of the PSB. And I just want to be reassured that if we do have a role, that we understand that role very clearly. If we don't have a role, then fine and dandy. Okay. Need a mover and a seconder to accept as information the presentation by the inspector, Member Van Houten, Member Santos. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. That takes us to last item H, which is the communications to the Ministry of the Solicitor General on the composition of police services boards. At the last council meeting, this was discussed as a result of correspondence with the clerk and informing her as to what we would like to know at some point. And it is, and I want to make this absolutely clear, it is the municipality's decision, council's decision as to the composition of the board relative to the guidelines that have been provided. And the guidelines that are presently provided are based on percentages. 20% provincial appointees, 20%, these are minimums, 20% appointment from the community, plus council representation. So we have a board of 5. If council, the municipality in its wisdom, wishes to change that balance such that there's 20% on a board of 5, that's 1 representative from the province. And if they want to change the balance to be 2 representatives from the community, they will have to express those desires to the ministry and the minister and see what the outcome will be. But that's not something that has to take place right now. The deadline at the end of this month, well, it was June 7th, but unofficially at the end of this month, to let them know that the present composition is fine and dandy. But they do have a window of opportunity going forward to promote any kind of adjustments that they wish to have. So that's their decision. Right now, we're looking for the Police Services Board to say, yeah, okay, we recognize that the present board does meet the minimum requirements, and that's the fundamental. So the board will say, yes, the present board makeup composition meets the minimum requirements, and that's really, I need a mover and a seconder to make that simple statement. Comment?
So, Mr. Chair.
Well,
So are we
go
discussing
ahead,
the
Member
motion?
Santos, yeah.
So we've been consulted.
Yeah.
The motion is to basically communicate that we're okay with the 2020.
We recognize that
We
it's...
recognize?
Yeah.
And the minimal requirements, so we're good? Okay. I have no problem with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything further? Moved by moved by Member Van Houten. It's inbred. Seconded by Member Santos. Police Services Board concurs with Norfolk County Council that the current composition of the Police Services Board meets the minimum requirement or criteria as outlined by the Ministry of Solicitor General. And Police Services Board recommends to Norfolk County Council to inform the Ministry of the Solicitor General of their desire to alter the composition of the Norfolk County Police Service Board relative to the minimum number of provincial appointees and community representatives if the county so desires. All right? All in favor? Thank you. That's carried.
Note today?
That's in our minutes, and the minutes will go to the council. Whenever council meets, they'll get it. But with the mayor attending, Councillor Huffman had to leave early. She's made aware of it. But certainly the clerk will have to bring that forward. And Aaron is in the clerk's office, so the communications are clear. That takes us then to other business. Is there anything from board members as to other business? Go ahead, Mr. Santos.
Mr. Chair, thank you. To our Chief Scott, just wondered with regards to the reporting center, the accident reporting center, how that is working here in Norfolk County. I mean, are the numbers up or are they down? I know we have COVID, but could you kind of explain what's happened in the last month or two, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will defer to our subject matter expert, Staff Klingbeil.
So for your awareness, since we implemented the Collision Reporting Center, December 15th, we've had 113 collisions reported to the center. So actually 100 of those were for 2021. And it's been 33% of the reported collisions in Norfolk County have been reported to the Collision Reporting Center. So it's been very successful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Chief, so I just want to understand then, so it's working well. We've got the government hours between 9 and 4:30?
It's Monday to Friday between 8 and 4. We did have it open on Saturdays, but when we ran all the stats, it made more sense just to keep it open Monday through Friday.
And the last question is the signage. Is there signage on our highways or outside to kind of guide individuals to the reporting center?
Not as of yet, but that was being done through the OPP in conjunction with the MTO, but we're still awaiting that signage.
Mr. Chair, to her. The reason I asked that question is because Norfolk County, of course, you know, July, August, we have a lot of out-of-towners, so they might not know where the OPP station is. And we've got these Highway 6, we've got Highway 59, we've got Highway 24, Highway 3, so it would be good to just kind of have that signage out there to make them aware.
Further other business from members? Thank you, George. I'll just bring one item back to your attention. Certainly, I copied you on the correspondence received about the impending purchase of 12 pole-mounted speed watch signs, and then the committee of council and which the OPP have representation will sit in road safety committee or whatever it's called. We'll make some decisions about locating those pole-mounted signs. So good news, the 12 on order, or at least the tender is out, and we'll see where that goes imminently. That's all good news. Anything else for the good of the board from members from the OPP? No? Thank you very much. And at that point, I would say question period, but there's no one from the media, and I know that Simcoe Reformer is watching, so if they have any questions or comments, they will send them forward as appropriate. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn at this time, which is 11:19 by my watch. Santos. And Member Chop. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.